Welcome to Facebook Live at the Kansas City Star, Big 12 Tournament Edition with Big 12 Tournament media members here. Sam Mellinger here to my left. Sam, how you doing?
I'm great.
Good,
How are you?
good. And look who's here. Look who came to join us
How
today.
about that guy?
Kellis Robinett, not only of the Kansas City Star, but the Wichita Eagle, kansascity.com, kansas.com, just about every .com and Kansas City in Kansas publication that is available. Kellis, good to have you here.
Thanks. Glad I can make it. I'm loving this backdrop next
about
to
that?
Sam and Blair. This is why I came.
So,
Who cares about the rest of the Big 12 tournament? I came here for this.
And Kellis covers Kansas State on a regular basis and got to see a W last night. We'll talk about Kansas State and KU and the Big 12 tournament. But I thought before we did that, let's talk about yesterday and the incredible series of events that occurred in the sports world. But before we even do that, I want to bring you up to date on what has transpired today. Kellis, you heard this morning that for all we know, the Big 12 tournament is on for today.
Yeah, fluid situation. Things could obviously change at a moment's notice, but as of right now, they're planning to play the games as scheduled with limited fans. So every game will have about 250 fans in attendance and credentialed media, and that's it. But right now, the games will continue.
Right, and that's true of other conference tournaments that are being played today in conference tournament week. So the Big Ten, the ACC, the Pac-12, the SEC, but one thing in common, they're all going to be played, as Kellis said, without fans in the building, or with very, very limited number of fans, a situation that I've never seen.
No. I think the closest comparison is, I think it was 2015 when the Orioles played somebody, and no fans were allowed because there was a lot of
Camden Yards, right?
What do we call that? Civic unrest.
Right.
There were, sort of riots in the city. It's going to be freaking bizarre, surreal. I mean, it's going to be like no other game. I mean, we can make jokes about like poorly attended games at different arenas or whatever, but ain't like this.
The only thing I could really compare it to is a long time ago. I think Billy Gillespie was coaching at Kentucky at the time, but the tornadoes ripped through Atlanta, and the SEC tournament had to move to a smaller gym with very few fans. And I remember the few people who were there were going crazy after every basket. But that's the only thing I could really think of.
I think they moved it to Georgia Tech, so they played the games on a court that had ACC on it, and they're playing at the SEC tournament. So quite.
They might have the Final Four there this year too.
Well, that's right, and we'll talk about that as well. So anyway, so it's about 10 a.m. Central Time, and this is what's happened today so far. The NHL, we went to bed last night, not knowing what the NHL was going to do today after the NBA suspended its season because of coronavirus detected in the Utah Jazz player, Rudy Gobert. But the NFL's advised its teams not to conduct morning skates, practices, or team meetings today. The Boston Marathon's talking about moving the race from the spring to the fall.
Oh, wow.
Let's see. In Kansas City, the St. Patrick's Day Parade's been canceled. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
That's huge here. That's thousands and thousands of people. That's Chiefs Parade, only in green, basically, right? And K-State made some news this morning too.
Right.
They
no classes next week. They're all suspended, and then after that, it will be all online classes. So it'll be a little tricky. Spring football is supposed to start on March 17th, but as of now, same with the Big 12 tournament. They're planning to have players back and just go ahead and start. We'll see if that changes.
Yeah, I mean, KU and Missouri also have suspended their classes for an extended period, and some schools I've noticed in the country have just told their students not to come back in the spring. That they essentially
Ivy League, basically.
Yeah, the school's out. For them, it's all, of course, because of the coronavirus, the COVID-19, and precautions that are being made. Listen, the news was it's like every hour yesterday, we're sitting at Sprint Center waiting for games to start, and every hour something comes down the pike that was just like, oh my gosh, this is ridiculous.
It was crazy to watch.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like, you could kind of see it coming, right? Like I think a lot of us kind of felt late morning-ish or early, whatever, that the way this is going, there just hasn't been any break of news that's like, oh, well, that's not as bad as it was an hour ago. Like, you know, this is turning around. Things are getting better. And you just wonder, like, everything that is news at 10 becomes like sort of antiquated and cute by like noon, you know, because it's just gotten worse because this thing like exponentially spreads. I mean, we're talking about the NCAA tournament playing without fans. And you know, especially in the second weekend and the Final Four moving to smaller arenas, is anybody sure that that's going to happen? that the tournament's even going to be played? I'm not.
No,
I'm not totally confident in it. No.
I'm not.
I feel like when the NBA came out and did that last night, suspended games, it threw everything into doubt.
Yep.
It did. It put it on a different track. The idea of whether or not to play. Look, to be honest, we came to work today. Not 100% sure today's games of the Big 12 are going to be played. And it wasn't until, because of the time zone, the ACC had to make a decision before other tournaments. They had an early game today in the Eastern time zone, and John Swafford, the commissioner there, said games are going to go on as scheduled today, but tomorrow's not guaranteed.
Yeah.
So
wow.
that's kind of how I feel about this tournament. It looks like games are going to be played starting at 11:30 at Sprint Center with Texas and Texas Tech, and the women's tournament starts today at Municipal with 4 games, and those are going to tip off on time, but there's no guarantee tomorrow's games will be played.
Yeah, what'd you just say? You said tomorrow's not guaranteed. Like, that is something that's been said in a lot of contexts, but feels truer now than ever before.
Play like there's no tomorrow.
That's right.
Yeah,
no excuse not to, right?
So there were games played on Wednesday night, and Kansas State was involved.
2 good ones, actually.
Yeah, in terms of great finishes, right? In the first game, Oklahoma State trailed Iowa State most of the night and came back, and then there was a frantic final 8 seconds in that game where Iowa State went ahead, and Oklahoma State took the ball out of bounds after a basket, went the length of the floor, and scored. And ended up beating Iowa State by 1. The significance of that game locally is Oklahoma State now plays Kansas today at about 2 o'clock. And then, Kellis, you covered the second game, which was K-State TCU, the Horned Frogs that swept Kansas State in the regular season. But you and I talked before the game that you kind of had a sense that it could have been K-State's night. I don't know if the game went the way you thought it was going to go. Kansas State jumped out big on it. Lost the lead in the second half, but ended up winning the game.
It was basically the complete opposite of the way all of their games went in the regular season, where they would fall behind, fight like heck to get back in the game, and then fall apart late. This was the complete juxtaposition of that. They got off to a 25-8 lead, coughed it up, looked like for the world they were going to lose when they were down 49-45 with about 3 minutes to go, and then get this, scored the last 8 points of the game. 8-0 run to finish the game. It was the first time they'd won back-to-back games since November. First time they'd won a game away from Bramlage Coliseum since November. First time they'd won a game by single digits since January, since January 29th. So, Bruce Weber after the game said, I'm just happy for the kids. We get to play another game. And, the season's alive for now. They're marched to both a potential Big 12 tournament championship and an NCAA championship are still alive.
Control their own fate.
They only scored 53 points, so I don't have a whole lot of faith they're going to keep this train rolling.
How many did they give up?
Just 49. It was a rock fight. But hey, credit to them. They found a little bit of something here these last 2 games, and it's been a rough season. They've set the school record for losses in a single year, 21. So not great, but I think it speaks to their character that with all that they were able to come back and close out the season with a little bit of momentum. It shows something.
Beating a team that has some postseason tournament hopes, not NCAA, but that probably could do in TCU. But I think I read yesterday too that the NIT is there's no plans to scrap that yet. And again, as we talked about the way the news unfolded yesterday, I forgot what the first big piece of news was the Tom Hanks news earlier in the day, or
I think Tom Hanks was last night.
Yeah, that was
later.
Was
it in the evening?
About 9, yeah.
Okay, well let's just we went into Wednesday having talked to Bob Bowlesby, Big 12 commissioner, the day before, who said, look, all plans are to play the games, to have fans in the arenas. Even when it was suggested, could you play the games in empty arenas? And Bob said, look, it's all plans are to play the tournament as usual, but he didn't rule out any possibility. And this was on Tuesday afternoon. So almost 20, maybe a little over 24 hours later, he's sitting at the podium in a press conference setting in 24 hours, saying the tournament's going to continue, but in empty stadiums. Well, that's how quickly the news travels, and that's how quickly he found out, or he and other commissioners, because this was like a dominoes throughout college basketball, right? All the other major conferences did the same thing. After a couple of conferences, the MAC, the Big West, the two that I can, and the Ivy, Ivy canceled its, and the MAC and the Big West said they were playing in empty buildings. So it was that happened on Wednesday morning. The Ivy decision came on Tuesday. The others happened Wednesday morning. By Wednesday afternoon, all the tournaments were announced that basically announced that they were going to play in empty arenas.
The CBI did announce they're canceling too.
That's right.
If that's of interest to anyone, maybe TCU. That's actually a tournament they could have gone to.
That was significant because that's a tournament that when they canceled, it's like, okay, they have the least amount of money at stake, and there's a lot of isn't that a tournament that schools have to pay?
Yes,
an entry fee basically.
They were probably going to have a hard time getting teams to pay to compete in these, but still, it's a mile marker a little bit. It's I feel the same way about the Ivy League. The Ivy League can be not like a moral center, but just sort of like they genuinely they have proven with actions that they don't really care about money. Like they are academics first. Technically no athletic scholarships, right? But so when they do something, it's like, oh, okay, like that's how we should act.
Yeah.
So what's the closest we can get and still protect profits? And this is what they're doing now.
They got money.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I saw like Harvard's endowment is like 38 million or 38 billion. Sorry.
Yeah, billion. It's like number one, and Yale's in the top two or three or something like that. So,
but my point is like they make athletics decisions not based on money, and which is an outlier in college sports. And so I feel like once that happens, then other leagues need to be like, oh, okay, like if that's what we should be doing, we have these multi-million, whatever contracts. We really want to protect those. What's the least we can do and still act like we're
They even
safe?
might have given up some money because they actually did have a tournament this year in the past. They haven't.
No, they gave it up. Yeah, but I'm saying like they make those decisions not based on money, whereas the Big 12 is obviously making decisions based on money.
Right.
And that's not a slam. That's the way the world works.
I don't remember there being a day quite like yesterday in sports where a professional league basically suspended its season.
That was crazy. And the way that happened, like they're literally about to tip.
Yes.
And then what they call medical director or trainer, whatever,
in Oklahoma City.
I kind of like, I don't know, that story will come out, but if that's how it was going, they were just going to have the ball tipped without that test result having come back. That seems weird. You can't wait.
Now, apparently the test result came in the form of a text to the Utah team, and it was Utah that basically alerted Oklahoma City, the way I understand it, that the test came in, it was positive for Rudy Gobert, and it was Utah that informed Oklahoma City, we can't play this game.
Yeah, but it just seems weird to me that Utah wouldn't have said, hey, look, we got this Corona test. Can we just wait like 5 minutes, until we get it back? Maybe before the pregame handshake and bro hugs.
Yeah.
That happened, could we?
And did you see Mark Cuban's response when he found out?
Visually?
The visual when he saw the text. Yeah.
And Donovan Mitchell, one of Gobert's teammates now, tested positive.
Yes, that's right. Hey, so what is this? What's it going to be like today? We're gonna go find out for the first time for me, and I'm older than both you guys, so I've seen more sport. We're gonna find out what it's like to see a sporting event, a major sporting event played in an empty arena. Is there a benefit to a team, or what's this going to sound like, look like, be like?
Well, having actually covered some games in empty arenas. And I'm not taking a shot at Kansas State here, but they go and play in like preseason tournaments where there's nobody there.
Right.
They played a game against Mississippi State in Newark, New Jersey, at 11 a.m. East Coast time this season, where there was no way there was 125 people in that stadium. You could hear every word that both coaches said. I think the biggest challenge will be, bringing your own energy. It's kind of like going to a KU football game in Lawrence. Some teams have trouble with that when they get in there and they look around. They're like, "What's going on here? Why aren't there fans?"
It
is both hilarious and real.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't think it's a problem, but it can be. I think maybe for a team like Kansas, maybe that's an issue because they're used to having all this fan support. Now they got to play in front of a quiet arena. I don't know if that'll be that big of a deal. There'll still be some noise. It'll be weird without bands. I think from our perspective, it'll be neat because we'll get to hear every single thing that these coaches say, especially the first nightcap game between K-State and Baylor with Drew and Weber yelling back and forth.
That's right.
I'm on when I just have my recorder on all game.
You can make a case both ways, right? Like maybe not necessarily for this week in the Big 12 tournament, but if the NCAA tournament is played starting next week, you can make a case that what you just said, Kellis, that the big schools that are used to having packed gyms and all that stuff have grown used to feeding off that energy and everything. You can also make a case that in those arenas, we've all, even me and Kellis, you more than us, but all three of us have been in enough of these arenas where, the 2 seed or the 3 seed or whatever, the 1 seed is, maybe it's tied or it's within 3 points with 5 minutes left. And 70% of that gym does not care about either one of those teams. And now that 70% is all on the Cinderella. And if that gives anybody any extra, you can make a case either way. My sense is that it's good for the higher seeds, just because
the better seeds.
The better teams. Just because I think that moment when the Cinderella, when the underdog gets the gym, is unlike anything else in sports. Like there's no other situation where that happens, where there's most of the fans there don't care either way about your school. And now all of a sudden they are the biggest, Northern Iowa fans that have ever been, or the biggest, Norfolk State, that stuff is real. That happens.
We've all seen it. We've all heard it and experienced it. And I really hope that at least we get a chance to see the games. And
I do too.
There's no guarantee. I wonder. It's still in the morning. We haven't been over to Sprint Center yet, so we haven't talked to anyone about this. But look, if for whatever we know the reason, but if NCAA tournament gets postponed, I mean, is that the action that will be taken? Will it be canceled or postponed? Could you move the college basketball championship to a month from now or 6 weeks from now? I don't know if you can do that.
I don't know how,
especially with guys looking to go pro.
Yeah, I mean, it would mess with that timeline. My hope is that we could,
get it played somehow, if not on its schedule.
Look, it's my favorite sports event that exists, and just so selfishly, both professionally and personally, I hope they find a way to play it, but. I always think about in these situations like, how's history going to look at it?
Right.
And I don't know what, I hear like, World Health Organization, CDC, like all these people talk about like avoid big crowds. I don't know what they've said, and this is probably just my own ignorance. Have they talked about what it means to play games without fans? Like, is that avoiding big crowds? Does that help?
Is that enough? Is what you're saying?
Yeah. Does that flatten the curve?
If there's still 300 people there, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't. But what was there's a city? Was it Seattle or somewhere prohibited any gatherings of 1,000 people or more?
Right.
This would not be.
I'll be under that. You're right.
That's under that limit. So I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Does that help flatten the curve? Because as Bob Bowlesby and others have said, like if you're going to be quarantined, you want something on TV to watch.
Yes.
I guess the one thing you could do if you really wanted to postpone the tournament is maybe you get all the teams, send them all to one site, and just have continuous games like when the Final Four would normally be played or something like that.
And you wouldn't have to. You wouldn't be. You wouldn't have to do it on a Thursday. Thursday. You could start on Tuesday. Maybe play all week if you're at one site. If you want to play. How many games is it? 63 games of the NCAA tournament?
67, right?
Is it 67? It's one less than the right. Yeah.
Used to be 63.
Yes, used to be. That's what I was thinking.
You old journalist, still thinking that way.
I can't believe how that has come back to bite me. I mean, older people used to be respected.
At least you didn't flash back to when only conference champs made the tournament. At least you didn't say 15 games.
I remember that. I was there for that. I've thought about that. What is there a reason to take? What's the reason to go to Omaha or to St. Louis, or especially to Spokane? For where first and second round sites are
Just
being
bring
played.
them all here.
Would it make things? I don't know if it would make things easier. Would it?
I'm really not smart.
Because essentially the games are happening all the time anyway. Well, I guess maybe if this is what you're saying, instead of going, Thursday, Saturday, Friday, Sunday, and then waiting a week, are you saying you could just
just play games every day until you're done?
The round of 64 on a Monday, 32 on a Wednesday, 16 on a Friday.
Right.
You could get it done in a week.
Yeah.
9 days or whatever, if you did it like that.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so if a team doesn't have to play back to back, but they can play every other day or every third day or something like that.
Yeah.
And you could do it in one. You could do it in one arena.
You could certainly consolidate it to 2 weeks, but you could also do it. It wouldn't have to be one arena, but any major American city. I mean, hell, they could have the whole thing at Kansas City. You could have games. You got Municipal. You got Sprint Center. You've got. Hy-Vee. You're not going to have fans.
You get Sweeney Rec.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of gyms.
There are arenas here that where you can have multiple.
Yeah, you could have some games that are like Rockhurst and Shawnee Mission East. I mean,
Yep. You can do it. I was thinking about Chicago too. There's 5 Division I cities and arenas in Chicago. So, yeah, those. I imagine Dan Gavitt of the NCAA and other commissioners. That's part of the conference calls, the conversations that they're having here today. But what an unprecedented,
It's bonkers, man.
It's crazy. It's the only time where it things other outside of sports completely engulf it. Even last night when I was. I sent out a tweet like, "Hey, Kansas State's off to this great lead. Things are looking good." And people are like, "Why are you even tweeting about this?
What are you doing?"
None of this matters. I'm like, well, I mean, they're paying me to cover the game.
Well, it is different too because other things even just like last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was that there's a tornado that goes through Nashville, 9/11. These big disasters, you can visually see, destruction. Mm-hmm. This is different.
Right.
And you got at least a quarter of the population out there saying oh, this is all fake.
And people can have it and not know it. People can have it and know it, but be asymptomatic or whatever the term. I'm still not a doctor, but
getting closer. Getting closer.
The Super Bowl victory did not
average doctor
afford you a degree.
Average doctor at best. That makes it different because the tendency is. Screw it. Let's play some games. It's most people that get it aren't gonna die. They'll, whatever. But gosh, I mean, the more you read, the more you listen to the people that actually know what they're talking about, the health experts, the doctors.
Yeah.
It's tilting pretty heavy toward
not gathering.
What they're doing at the absolute least.
Yeah, exactly. Which is where look. Go to kansascity.com and kansas.com for all your local. Information, sports, and virus, but I'll tell you, I've been going on the WHO, the World Health Organization website, and CDC.gov for just basically up to date, accurate, non partisan information. Those are the two. WHO and the CDC is where I've been going. Our buddy Brian Davis from the Austin paper said he's the. Tech cheerleaders and band are already headed back to Lubbock on a bus. Texas band cheerleaders were out in front of the team hotel this morning. So
that's a sad drive home.
Yep. Oh my gosh. Yep.
Well, I saw yesterday the Wichita State's cheer team made it halfway to the AAC tournament when they got word they needed to come back. So
they turned around.
They drove all the way to Oklahoma and then just went Abe Simpson. Whoop, right back.
Yeah. Well, it is going to be. It's going to be a bizarre day, just to hear the echo of a basketball bouncing in a 19,000-seat arena. And
there's still important things in the line, too. I mean, Texas Tech. It's a big game for both those schools.
It could be an elimination game for the loser of that game in terms of the NCAA tournament.
Who can qualify for a tournament that may happen?
All right, guys. Well, let's head up the street and get into Sprint Center. They're delaying the opening of the building for the media by a couple hours today. In past years, you could get in for an 11:30 tip. You could have gotten in there at, I don't know, 8 o'clock in the morning if you wanted to. Today, media not in until 10:30. So we're on our way. It's almost 10:30. We're going to head up there and catch the sight and sound of the Big 12
Sight and no
tournament.
sound.
That's right. So thanks for joining us. Thanks for Beth Welsh for spinning the dials and producing this thing, and follow the coverage of the news and sports on kansascity.com and kansas.com. Thanks, guys.